Hi, I'm Lynn.
And I'm Amanda, and this is the Pursuit of Badasserie, the podcast.
This podcast is all about taking action and creating that badass business abundance and life that you want.
Where we share stories, laughs, wins, and epic fails to show you the whole picture of the entrepreneurial journey.
It's not just unicorns and rainbows, people.
Jump on and follow us through this raw and witty roller coaster,
where we get down and dirty and go behind the scenes of life and entrepreneurship.
Get on it,
get over it,
and get after it.
Hi there, I'm Lynn.
And I'm Amanda. Welcome to the Pursuit of Badasserie, the podcast. We are talking about one of our favorite things today. We have spoken about this, we have taught around this, and this is actually a 4-part series. So buckle up. This is session 1 of a 4-part series on DISC. If you are not familiar with DISC, it is a behavioral analysis, and we use this every single day, whether we want to or not. It is ingrained now. So whether we want to say it, we use it all the time. And we are excited to share how you can use DISC in your business to get more business, to be a better boss, all the things. Let's talk about DISC.
Yeah. So just an overall view of DISC before we jump in is behavioral styles have been around for centuries and centuries. Actually, back in the philosophical days, the philosopher days, Socrates and all his homies, like they would notice that certain traits were common amongst certain groups of people, right? So this is kind of when it started to be conceptualized. There was actually records of it, but back in, I think it was in the 20s, there was a scientist who started to really like format it or create it as what we know it today. So DISC is, so we'll go each one, but D is for dominance, I is for influence, S is for steadiness, and C is for consciousness, or compliance. And we're all. So we are all of them. We're a mix of all. However, we have our primary. And the reason why it's important to understand DISC behavioral style is because it helps with better communication, helps with better understanding and engagement. It can help drive sales teams. There's so many positive points to understanding DISC profiles, motivators, different things like that. And yeah, maybe we'll do one where it just overall describes it, but I guess let's dive into the first one, D, dominance, which we'll also refer to as go-getter.
Yes. So I'm sure it is, I'm actually wondering if you know what you are. So you can't respond to us, but if you know what you are, that can really translate into how you lead your team, how you see conflict, how you see the world, really, because when you know yourself better, you're able to know others better. So that's one of the reasons why we teach this so much. It's not a way to like manipulate your entire world and see what everyone else is doing can help, but it really is more about knowing yourself. So when it comes to your dominance people, I am what's called a high D, which means I'm like, when I do the DISC assessment, most people are a combination of all 4, and I am as well, but I am significantly higher in the D world. So I'm a high D. Lynn is also a D, but she's also very I as well. So over the course of the next 4 weeks, we're going to be breaking down what that looks like. So from a high D perspective, these are your go-getters. These are high in achievements. They are not necessarily loud and proud, but they're definitely going to be more assertive in a lot of ways. They're going to be more matter of fact. They think and act and speak in bullet points. So if you ever get an email from me, it probably has like 15 bullet points in it to get the points across. So your high Ds are your go-getters. They're the people who are, trying to get more done. They're very task oriented and they're very fast acting. So they're more, it's not that they're not interested in people, but they're much more likely to follow tasks and be task oriented, and they're making decisions very quickly. So these are the people who are fast to make decisions, who are into doing things quickly, not necessarily recklessly. It's not a reckless thing, but they want the bullet point version of things so they can act quickly, make decisions quickly.
Yeah, I do want to back it up. We probably should have said this in the beginning is like, let me give you a really quick idea. Obviously, we want you to Google this and learn a little bit more after you listen to our podcast or message us and we can help you with this. But if you look at the DISC, the DISC, they're how they separate it is you are either fast paced or reserved, right? So when you make decisions, when you walk, when you think, are you more fast paced or are you more reserved in it? And then it's 4 quadrants. And then it's split into, are you more people oriented or more task oriented, right? So that's how you get the 4 quadrants. And Amanda said it that a high D is fast paced, but more task oriented, right? So high D is fast paced and task oriented. Yeah, they're super direct, they're super decisive. in I remember learning this a decade and a half ago, and one of the conversations that we had was around if a man is a high D, he's an achiever, he's a go-getter, he's doing what he's supposed to be doing. But when a woman is a high D, typically she is the B word because she's hungry, she's decisive, she's competitive. There's a certain confidence, an air of confidence when it comes to Ds, even if they're not so confident on the inside. Amanda, I love that you said that because they think, act, eat, do in bullet points, right? There's not fluff. There's not a lot of affection. It is, let's get this done. And again, Amanda said this, like she's very high on her assessment on the D, and we're a blend of all. So some of these attributes will fit you, but you might have some of the others. They're quick in decision, they're successful, super independent. They're the doers, right? They just do, like things come typically naturally for them, so they can just do. Some of the strengths of a high D would be quick decision making. They're able to make decisions, leadership under pressure. There's usually, I just had a meeting this week with a new client, a very large corporate client, and I'm training a sector of their company. And when I was asking questions with my contact, different behavioral style questions of each of the people, of course, the VP was a high D, like, of course, because they typically will have those leadership positions where you have to act fast, make decisions fast, super focused, can smell the successful people or the opportunity in the room. Like it's incredible, but super goal or results focused mindset all the time.
Absolutely. They're always about driving action. They're always about problem solving, always leadership, focus, very direct. But there are downsides to being a D. We want to make sure like it's very clear that no matter what you are in this DISC assessment, there are pros and cons, just like everything in life. So some of the cons of, or the perceptions, the negative perceptions of a high D are that they can appear more aggressive. They can be impatient. They can be blunt to the point where it turns people off by how, or be so people oriented or so task oriented that they forget about the people because they're go, 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 get it done. And they sort of neglect the people. And I'm speaking from personal experience there. And they're motivated by power and challenges in fast-paced environments. So with that, people who are drawn to those environments can become more power hungry, can be all about, again, the achievements. But we're not just talking about the DISC assessment to explain what we are or so that you can think about what you are, but also when it comes to your business, when you are communicating with a high D, let's say, for example, let's say you are any other, let's pretend you're any other letter in the assessment. If you are trying to communicate and have a client who is a high D, it's important that you're direct. It's important that you're concise. It's important that you're, again, speaking, talking, working in bullet points and focusing on results, because that's going to resonate more with that person. So when we talk about the DISC assessment, it's not just knowing yourself, it's knowing your clients as well. If you can identify what your client is or team member is, or anybody else who you're interacting with, you can really start to employ the platinum rule, which is treat others how they want to be treated, not necessarily how you want to be treated, but treat them how they want to be treated. And coming from the perspective of a high D, I have often had teams of people who were the opposite on the spectrum of what my personality and behavioral styles are. So knowing what my behavioral style was and what theirs was really helped me become a better leader, because then I was speaking, communicating with them in a way that felt comfortable and right for them. And more things got done, which made me happier because, again, task oriented, because I knew how to communicate in a way that they could feel heard and hear it properly for their mind and their behavioral style. So the communication that you can really start to gain when you understand your own behavioral style, but as well as your team and just anybody you're interacting with, can also really benefit, because you can breach those weird communication challenges just by knowing how they want to communicate.
Yeah. If you're communicating with a high D, you have to approach them with confidence. Don't slouch, don't hesitate, don't stutter.
Don't be late. Don't be late. Don't be late.
They value time. Like they value time out of all the behavioral styles. They value time in a time is money type of way. Like, what's in it for me? Like, let's get this done. Like, no fluff, right? So no fluff at all. It's efficiency, it's respect. There's another thing I always like to give, like, again, Amanda said, and I'm very proud of you, especially for a high D, saying that, there's no right mix. There's no one better than the other. Although when we're teaching this, like, a lot of high Ds will disagree. Just because it's in their personality. They can be perfectionists in a lot of ways, control freaks as well. But high Ds tend to keep people at arm's distance because they do not want others to see that they have imperfections, even when they admit it to themselves. So they can be standoffish, or in some ways professionally superficial, where they're leading the conversation, they're making sure that they're getting their point across, and it's all business and very little personal. Now that can shift if they're a bit more aware of their behavioral styles, or a bit more emotionally intelligent. That can shift a little bit, but that's something to kind of keep in mind, because you never want to you have to be careful if you have to tell a high D that they're wrong or that something's not perfect. You have to handle it in a certain way, because they'll shut down. It's not that they don't make mistakes. It's not, but they absolutely get in a mode. And it's funny because Amanda said it. She's very, very high D. I'm high D and an I. So there are different things, but when we have problems in our business and we have to, and it's not one of us pointing it out to one another, but we both fall into our mechanisms as a behavioral style. And for me, it's quite funny, because I definitely see it even on myself. Sometimes I was like, "Ooh, man, come on."
We got off a call yesterday, and the first thing I thought was, I was really struggling to take any kind of criticism for a lot of reasons. There was a lot of emotionally charged things happening in the last couple of weeks for me. So because I am kind of strapped for
Capacity,
emotional capacity, I'm heavily falling into my behavioral style without the ability to adapt the way I usually am. And it was very comical to me, because literally we were on a call yesterday, and at the end of the call, I got off the call and I was like, okay.
That's funny.
Yeah,
I love that. I love that you noticed it. That's come a long way, Amanda, from when we first met each other.
Oh, yeah.
Well, and it's funny because I met our online business manager, lives here locally, and we met for lunch yesterday as well. And when I get super spread thin, I have to have all eyes on everything. It's not that I want to micromanage, it's the control thing and making sure nothing's falling through. And I told her, I was like, listen, I'm getting to that point, because I can recognize when I'm getting to that point. I'm like, so too many things I feel like are kind of falling through. So this is what I want to put in place, so that way I'm not feeling that. But this is why it's important to understand our behavioral styles, because Amanda and I, we have this conversation, even when it's hard, or we give each other space. Usually I'm the one to say something, because I don't know if that's more my other behavioral styles, but also it's more my personality of the holistic side and the personal side. I don't know what you want to call it, but usually I'll be like, I can tell you're struggling, babe, like because of XYZ. And I see the cause and effect just because, but also like this is something I've been practicing for decades. And I love it. I love it, love it, love it. But okay, let's get out of our our lives and our high D moments, and let's talk about a few other things. So high Ds, Amanda said it, like to get on a bad side of a high D, you come unprepared. So you never want to come unprepared. Come, know your stuff, and be really clear and concise about it. You don't want to be late, right? You do not want to be late. High Ds value that time, and they feel like you're not valuing them. High Ds in a team, they thrive on authority and autonomy. Now, a more emotionally evolved or spiritually evolved high D will also encourage autonomy and authority within the group, but those that are disconnected from understanding their behavioral style and or emotional intelligence, they typically will lead more like a very cut and dry dictatorship almost type of behavior. And again, it's sometimes when we can understand like, okay, shoot, that's their behavioral style. Like that's a need of theirs. They might not be aware of it. It helps us have more understanding and how to navigate. They're definitely big picture, more goal, future oriented, and how to drive results. Like that is an absolute nugget for a high D. Like they can be big picture and absolutely drive results. They're one who can have their feet in both the vision and the action.
Absolutely. And one thing that is, we were talking earlier about knowing your team and knowing the people around you. And I just want to do a couple of things around the aesthetic of a high D, like how you can spot them in a room. It's very, we joke about this all the time, that we'll walk into a networking event and we'll like suss out what behavioral style everybody is, which is part of the behavioral style of a high D, to suss out who they see and just like compartmentalize everybody, control the situation. Shocker. But when you're thinking about a high D, if you're looking at around the room for a high D, they're generally going to be wearing bold, straight color, like black. Like
the power colors.
The power colors, like they're wearing black. I mean, Lynn and I are both wearing black right now. So they're going to be wearing black. They're going to be wearing like classic, regular, like just normal understated jewelry. They're not going to be really blinging it out. They're not going to be like jumping all over the place with crazy prints and patterns and like they're not going to go, generally speaking, again, this is generally speaking, they're not going to be those outlandishly dressed with like fur and then a plaid and then an animal print all in one outfit. Those are the guys. Then they're not going to be, they're going to be more authoritative. They're going to be making eye contact. They're going to be shaking hands and holding eye contact. They're going to be using their entire name when they introduce themselves, first and last name. They're not just going to be like, hey, I'm Kit. It's going to be, I'm Catherine von Helsing the third. They're going to say the whole thing. Again, it's sort of that status or authority, leadership train of thought that they have. So when you're looking around a room, they're going to be people who are more in the center of things. They're not going to be on the outskirts of the room. They're not going to be away from people. They're going to be like walking straight and fast and like charging at you in some way. So it's always funny when I think about my old networking style and how I would just like bull in a china shop. I'm going to meet this person and I'm going to go to them. And if that person's not my behavioral style, it was definitely a turnoff to have this like scary person approaching you so quickly. So things to think about when you're in a networking event or when you're not quite sure what your people are.
Yeah, definitely. They're well put together, confident. Typically, if you see somebody in brand names, like all the brand names and super like confident, they're going to be mostly a high D. Again, it's just higher quality, at least the appearance of. And with the ladies, typically high Ds like structured bags, which is quite interesting. Minimal makeup, but on point, like always put together. You're never going to see a high D running to the grocery store in their pajamas or a wrinkled outfit. Like they have to be put together. So all my family members who would make fun of me for always ironing my clothes. It's my behavioral style. My behavioral style. Listen, I think probably because we can go on and on. This is like half day actual workshop. Actually, we do it in a full day workshop as well. But a couple of things that high Ds can work on: letting people in, delegation. A lot of times it's like, if it you know, I can do it better myself, right? It's easier for me to do it myself. They sometimes can overlook detail because they're so quick to make decisions. So really practicing that. Stop keeping people away. There is no perfection. It's progress over perfectionism. And work on your patience. There are many times still, that's one thing that I have to remind myself: be patient, be patient, be patient for those that don't know, be patient for those that are a little bit slower, especially in certain regions of the world. Like you have more cultural nuances that kind of influence things. So like time.
Yeah, I struggle. Ooh, I've been struggling with that recently. Ooh, yep.
That is one thing, but also you can set the rules and lay down the law. So in sales, I have so many stories around this, but in sales, if you're wanting to sell a high D, you don't want to give them all the different options. You want to think in bullet points, make it efficient. And sometimes high Ds will tell you how to sell them, but essentially like give them the two top things. Why, what's the pros and cons, really concise, and they're quick decision makers. So, but if you give them a bunch of stuff and you try to pull them on this long sales process, even if it's your process, you're going to lose them. They have no time. They don't want to have the time to go through that, right? Make it super concise, super bullet pointed for them. So that way, yeah. And one other thing too, which is if you want a response from a high D, like in an email or in a text, you have to ask a question and put it at the top, put it in the subject line. They will love you if you put the question in the subject line and make it really concise. Now you can put all of the fluff if you need in the body of the email, but bold all of the questions because they're ones who will skim read. They just want to get down to brass tacks. Like they just want to get down to what is needed.
100%. That is an excellent tip. And conversely, if you are a high D and your team is not, send the response email, even if they didn't ask you a question, because they're expecting a response, even though they didn't ask a question. And it will drive you insane. It will hurt your soul to respond when there was no actual question. And it will improve the communication that you have with that team member. I sent like 4 of those emails today, and it was painful. I felt like my time was being sucked away just to send a response that didn't really require a response in my mind. But it's not about treating people how you want to be treated. It's about treating how they want to be treated. And in my team members' mind, it was an important part, that response and acknowledgement. So again, that's the whole purpose of why we're talking about the DISC assessment, is that knowing yourself and knowing the people around you can really help you increase that communication and increase your sales, increase your personality or your personability in a networking event. So there's lots of ways that you can use this to your benefit from a professional standpoint, but ultimately knowing yourself is always a better thing anyway. Knowing more about yourself is always a good idea.
Absolutely. All right. I think we're at time. We want to be respectful.
Because we can talk about this forever. And if you are interested in learning more about DISC, please reach out to us. We both do trainings on this, full day trainings on the entire thing, on all the nuances of it. And we will put in the show notes a link to test it out, just to go do a DISC assessment. So if you don't know what you are, there's a link in the show notes that you can take a little test and see what you are. Are you a D, an I, an S, or a C?
Yes. Well, we're a mixture of all, remember?
Yes. Wow.
What's your high behavioral style and in the natural state, because we do have our adaptive state, but that's for another one. All right. So for all you high Ds out there, now you have a better understanding of why you do what you do. For all of those who do not have high Ds, now you can understand why that person is the way that they are. And so hopefully this will help you bridge some of those disconnects.
And for anybody who reads the show notes, you'll understand now why they're all written in bullet points, because I write them. So that's why. That's why.
Yes, absolutely. All right. Till next time.
Get after it.
All right, everyone. It's not enough to just listen.
Now you've got to put it into action.
We are so excited to see what you do next.
If you enjoyed our show, please leave us a review on iTunes.
And to find out more about what we're doing, visit us at thepursuitofbadasserie.com.